Hey guys, what's up? So, yeah, pulling this one right at the very end, huh? Like down to the wire here. But at least I was able to quickly squeeze this in, at least for the Patreon people. But they're at least hopefully going to be getting this at the very end of the month, and everyone else is going to see this at the very beginning of the next month, which I apologize for. But things, dealing with stuff. Hell, the background should kind of let you know that I'm kind of in the middle of transition here. Not going to be here for that much longer. I mean, don't worry, things are fine. You think they're fine. It's just that kind of in the middle of moving. In fact, I would have been moved by now, but there've been complications. But most likely by middle to end of the next month, I'm probably going to be in a different spot. But whatever. Everything's chill. Don't worry. Nothing's really horrible or anything like that. It's just in the middle. There's a lot of craziness going on. So quickly wanted to whip this one out. And it's basically on, as you can tell by the title, like on Chinese martial arts and fighting and stuff like that. Anybody who's been paying attention to this knows that Chinese martial arts for the past few years have really been getting a bad rap on its effectiveness. And while I would like to say, and I do say, that things are kind of improving on that front, at least there are a lot more people taking it seriously. Like, Chinese martial artists on the mainland and outside and elsewhere who are trying to really show its effectiveness and doing what they can to like train in a more practical manner and focus a lot more on combat effectiveness. There is still a lot of questionable stuff that's seen. I'm not even getting into the whole stuff about secret powers and all that. We already know that's BS. I'm just simply talking about what it takes to train someone to be able to fight effectively, or like be able to apply your particular style or your particular art effectively. And it's problems like that which lead to people later on, saying that, oh, this style is better than that style or this style is better than this and better than that, without really looking into the context of how the art itself developed and how it's being trained. Because it's one thing to have an art that is effective. It's another thing to be able to train it in an effective manner, because it doesn't matter how good a particular body of knowledge is at whatever it is that it's being applied towards. If the way you're applying it isn't exactly efficient or doesn't exactly fit the scenario properly, or if you learned it in a way that you're not going to be able to apply it right, or there's certain gaps in your knowledge, then yeah, it's just not going to come out right, and then people are going to say, well, it's BS. It's kind of a thing that I've always known, at least subconsciously, at least kind of, on a fundamental level, but it's not something I've really expressed, like put into words or really had a straight conversation about. And it's on actual, applications, and, the usage of your art. A lot of times I've seen with certain forms of Chinese martial arts, the way it's being applied, it's ineffective, not necessarily because the techniques suck, or even that the person applying it necessarily doesn't know what they're talking about, but that it's just overly complicated. When you really look at it, fighting's not all that complicated. There's a channel that, if you are interested in really having like discussions and examinations of Chinese martial arts, if this is the sort of thing you're really into, there's a channel I wholeheartedly recommend, and it's called Try Essence Martial Arts. This channel, in my opinion, is criminally undersubbed. This guy is really good at breaking down, what actually makes Chinese fighting arts work, or like, what one should be looking for, why certain arts aren't that effective, what is a good way of applying weapons, why weapons were done the way they were, why fist forms are done the way they are, and all that. Granted, if you're somebody who is thin-skinned when it comes to your particular brand of Chinese martial art, you're probably not going to like this guy, because he's blunt when he points out what he considers to be, problematic in certain Chinese martial arts, and he holds certain opinions that might rub people the wrong way. But one thing that I have to say, and it's the reason why I really like his channel, he cuts out a lot of BS, and he really gets to the essence of what works and what doesn't, and why certain things aren't working, and what can be done to improve it. There was one particular video he had put out a while ago, a long time ago, that I recently had looked at, and it was basically on the style that he was studying on Wujing Dongbei, and why it's better than most of the other Chinese martial arts that he personally had learned before sticking with that style. Now, Dongbei in particular, or Dongbei Chuan, is a martial arts style that I really wish I had gotten a chance to learn. Especially, like, even now, I'm hoping sooner or later to bump into some instructor or somebody who can at least help teach me the fundamentals of it. I don't necessarily need to learn, like, you know, really getting deep into the art and picking up forms and all this type of stuff and getting high level, because I already got a martial art that I'm trying to do that with. It's Baguazhang. But Dongbei Chuan, I've, you know, looked at it, I've seen, you know, it applied, I've seen it done, and I really, really like it. Mostly because it tends to be very pugilistic minded. It has a very pugilistic mindset. In other words, it's very combat oriented. It may not seem that way to some people, but it's, if you look at how it's applied, if you look at the usage of the art, it's very straightforward. There's not a lot of nonsense. It's just getting there and hit them. And I like that when it comes to martial arts, because that's what fighting is. Now, the video that he did on Dongbei Chuan and why he considers it to be better than a lot of others was focusing on the fact that a lot of other Chinese martial arts he had studied, there was all these extra steps that were being done just to hit the guy. And the way arts are being taught, you're being taught all these different techniques and different ways to apply them. And the problem with that is every technique is being applied in a very specific way for a very specific scenario that may happen in a fight, where most times when you're going up against somebody and you're, whether you're sparring, whether it's a real fight, whether you're in the ring, whatever it is, they're not exactly doing what you were training to defend against or to stop. So you're like, the guy's, you know, you're ready for the blow. He's going to come at you with the left. Like, it'll be some crazy nonsense of, okay, he's going to come at me with his right fist, and I block it, and I pull it down, and then here comes his left hand, and I catch it, and I pull it down, and now he's trapped, and now I lift up this hand and hit him. And yeah, that's a kind of cool trapping sequence. I've seen that done several times in different arts. Wing Chun has a version of that. I've seen it certain forms of long fist. Certain others some have a version of that, but there's no guarantee that guy's going to react that way. I'm just saying. Hell, I'm speaking from experience here. So many times you try to do that the fist is coming at you in a different way, or they pull back instead of whatever. And you have to be able to adapt to that. If you don't have a way to adapt to them not doing what you thought they were going to do or what you were trained to do, you're screwed. And Dongbei Chuan and there are other effective Chinese martial arts, they don't take that approach. In fact, no effective fighting style takes the approach of, he's coming here, and you're going to do this, and you're going to pull here, and you got that, and then there, and you're going to put this under your chin, and you're going to hold it like this, and you're going to, no, like, what are you doing? Like, if you look at effective ways of teaching fighting, they don't really give you a whole lot of techniques in the beginning. In fact, they give you relatively few, and it's up to you to string them together in a way that's going to work. Like, look at boxing. How many punches really are there in boxing? Really isn't much. You got your jabs, you got your crosses, you got your hooks, you got your uppercuts. That's pretty much it. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can break it down even further if you really wanted to. You want to, like, split hairs and come up with a whole lot of other crazy. Well, there's this, there's the straight right, and there's, yeah, you know, there's all these. And I forgot you also got, you know, your straight right, but it tends to be a cross. There aren't that many, you know, basic punches. But how you string them together and how you combine them with your footwork and with how you dodge and weave and bound and all that, that's where the complication comes in. How are you applying it? And that only comes with practice and fully drilling the basics and being able to basically make your own sentences with it. Good martial arts skills, like teaching them, it's sort of like throwing somebody a box of Legos. You got very basic building blocks, and all of them can fit together in different ways. In the very beginning, you know, when you're a little kid, you just put stuff together. Look, I made a wall. Or you made a very basic man-shaped looking thing, right? Or maybe you made a box with it. Very basic stuff. It holds together. It works, right? But when you really get good with those Lego blocks, now you're doing crazy stuff with it. Now you're building castles. Now you're having huge layouts, complicated vehicles, Death Stars, all this type crazy stuff that you can do with these very basic building blocks. But the blocks themselves are still basic. You don't have a whole lot of complicated stuff made specifically for that one thing. It's like the difference between a model kit and Legos. The model kit will have basic, all the pieces that form it are made specifically for that kit. To then take those pieces and try to build something else with it is going to be rather complicated and rather difficult. Whereas the Legos, well, I can make a battleship with it. I can make a Death Star with it. I just, you know, need to get all the different blocks together. Now, there are going to be certain blocks that are going to have to be, all right, this particular piece, I am going to have to kind of shape it just right. Or I need a specific one because this basic shape is not good enough. But for the most part, you can get away with a lot with just the basics. And that's effective fighting techniques in a nutshell. They're not going to be teaching you now, this technique is made for 12 o'clock in the afternoon when he happens to make the chop just like this as he's stepping this way and the breeze is coming at you and the degrees is 68. Like, no, there's nothing like that. You know, in real fighting, and especially properly training it. It's like, oh, okay, here, look, here's your basic punch. Here's your, or hell, Chinese martial arts, especially the so-called internal ones, they go even simpler than that, in that they teach you effective movement and then you weaponize the movement and turn that into your weapon. That's really when you get down to like basics. They aren't teaching you a punch as much as they're teaching you this is how you move the arm. And how you move that arm can be deployed in a great number of ways. I've touched on this before, where your basic, you know, they're teaching you how to move. They're teaching you how to use your body effectively. And then after you get that down, you're like, hey, this same motion can throw the punch, but it can also intercept and it can also throw. I'm doing the same thing, but how are you applying it? And this is what's going to allow you to apply it properly. And every really good martial art tends to go that route. You get very basic things. You drill those basic things until you can do them in your sleep. And then you find different creative ways to apply it. But if you're learning an art where it's like, okay, today we're going to teach you how to defend against this particular technique that is done this particular way at this particular time in the morning, at this, and you got to do this first and this second and this third and this fourth and this, and then it will work. Good night. You most likely will never be able to apply that properly when the time comes. It's just too complicated. It's like somebody trying to teach you poetry and you haven't even learned your ABCs yet. Like, you got to start with the letters, put the letters into basic words, then string them into basic sentences and basic paragraphs, and then you can build on from there. Just about all learning is like that. If you're not learning these basics and you're not learning how to apply these basics and turning them into complicated movements, you're kind of screwed. So that's something that I wanted to throw out there. Like, just watching this video again reminded me of that particular fact. And it was just so fun, you know, again, seeing how Tongbei Chuan works, which is, again, it's very simple. Like, you can do the same type of motions and you will still get... That's the other thing about effective Chinese martial arts, and just martial arts, period. You can do pretty much the same thing in a variety of different scenarios and make it work. You know what I mean? Throw a low, like, you know, you're throwing a low leg kick to somebody else's thigh. If they don't do anything, they got hit. Bam, they're damaged. You can continue on from there. They lift their leg, but that's a moment that they're not attacking. You can then use that as a follow-up to cross them up with something else. You still won. Or they may have lifted their leg, but they didn't move the other leg out the way right, so the other leg gets hit, they fall down. This is what I mean. One basic motion, and no matter the scenario, you still got it to work if you applied it correctly. I'm pretty sure people who've had some training in boxing can say the same thing about their jab. They can say the same thing about throwing a good hook. You know, so that, okay, here's my plan. Bam! What is he going to do? And you got a flow chart from there. Like, what can you do from there? And usually you can get if as long as those first basic combos or the first basic motions you're doing, you've done it correctly, and you're not looking, it's not a specific thing. It's more like, I'm doing this. How is he going to react? Or, you know, boom, I do this. Depending on what he does next depends on what I do next, instead of, okay, I'm going to do this, and then he's going to do that, and then he's going to do this, and he's going to do that. You're not a mind reader. Come on. So, yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Oh, and by the way, the same thing works for weapons, too. Sword play, staff play, whatever. Same thing. If you're like, I'm going to do this block here, and then I'll come here and parry this, and you're probably... There's not that... There aren't really that many exchanges before somebody ends up getting hit. And with weapons, that's really dangerous, because you don't want to get hit at all. When it's bare hand, you can kind of get away with some things, like a little bit of damage here and there. But when it comes to weapons, you really don't want to get hit. I mean, maybe a light scratch here and there, but those are what you call close calls. You know, like if they get a really good cut in, a really good thrust in, hits a vital spot, that's it. You know, at that point, you're probably, you're fighting in a diminished condition, and at that point, all you can really hope for is that it's not lethal, and maybe I can take him out before he takes me out, if you still have the strength to do it. Not an ideal situation. So, yeah. Just consider that, those of you who are training in any sort of fighting art, just consider how you're training in it and how you're training to deal with certain scenarios. Are you being taught to... You're being taught your basic building blocks, you're being drilled in your fundamentals, and then you're learning how to apply those fundamentals in different ways and gradually using them in more sophisticated ways? Or are you given a lot of complex stuff and then told, then this is how you deal with this particular situation? If it's the latter, you're probably not being trained as effectively as you think you are. Just saying. Anyway, that's that. Hope you guys got something out of this. And yeah, catch you guys later.